This is a slide covering the Scottish Government R100 programme from a Cromar Community Council meeting in October 2021. It shows that there are 857 properties in Cromar and 355 of these were due to get a full fibre broadband as part of R100. 84 properties were not covered and instead were eligible for a voucher. In addition, there were 418 properties that were so close to the village centre that they already had broadband faster than 30 megabits and therefore would see no improvement. Since this meeting, we've been informed that the R100 timetable has been extended to 2027 and a recent Freedom of Information request shows that the programme now runs to 2028. With this background, we're pleased to welcome Michael Armitage and Campbell Cameron from Broadway Partners, who are planning to build a full fibre broadband to all properties in Cromar beginning in 2023.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and thanks very much for that introduction, Dave. Sorry, I'm not very good at multitasking. Speaking and sharing screens on Zoom is always a challenge for me, so forgive me for sounding slightly distracted. Can you see that? Can you see a first slide? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Okay, so so thanks very much for the time. I'll keep this short because I'm sure you've got lots of other things you want to be discussing. But of course, the most important thing in the world is having decent broadband, and we're pretty passionate about that as a company. As you know, Dave organised a couple of community meetings with us presenting our credentials, if you like, back in November, and that's led to a growing level of interest, I think, among some individuals in the local community, which is very encouraging. And what I want to do is just take the opportunity to give you a quick update on where we are from our side in terms of the planning and the organisation of this project. I quickly introduce Campbell Cameron. He's our Scotland manager. He's based in Oban, but that shouldn't be held against him. I'm based in London. Which I hope isn't held against me. We are, as a business, completely committed and totally committed to providing broadband in hard to reach rural areas in Scotland and also in Wales. And it's just a matter of historic accident that I happen to be in London, and Campbell is busily developing our business north of the border. So, like it or not, this is our sort of current branding, designed to be user friendly and unthreatening, and reasonably jolly and a little bit different from the crowd. Don't get too used to it because we're going through another rebranding exercise at the moment, so it will look a little bit different over the next several weeks. But it I hope gives you a sense of our enthusiasm and passion for the business. So a quick recap on the project for those of you who may not have been able to attend the previous community meetings. The plan is for the funding to be split basically 50-50 between Broadway and the governments being the Westminster and Scottish governments. As I'm sure you're aware, there's broadband voucher schemes available from the Westminster government and from Scottish government, and we're quite adept at working out how to work with those schemes. The typical rule of thumb is that we end up usually paying around 50% of the capital costs of a network, and the government is happy to provide the balance. The delivery will be, it's sort of hybrid in the sense that we use as much as possible of existing infrastructure, which means Openreach's ducts and poles, which obviously you're familiar with. You see the poles and you're probably aware of various underground activity by Openreach engineers. The nature of the beast, because it's the dominant player in the market, it's got significant market power. Openreach is obliged to open up its physical infrastructure to third parties, so we use that very willingly and very happily. We're quite adept at the intricacies of working with Openreach, and we'll be using for the actual delivery a mixture of local contractors yet to be engaged, but we're in the process of approaching them, and our own in-house delivery teams, engineers, surveyors, and so on. Local engagement is absolutely critical because it's from a self-interested point of view, because this is a voucher-led proposal. You only get a voucher if you actually stick your hand up as an individual to take service. So it's absolutely crucial that we drum up enough interest and demand to get people to register interest, which will eventually become the request for vouchers, which we will process on individuals' behalf. But it's absolutely crucial that we work very closely with the communities, and that's just going to be a recurrent theme over the next year or two. The council, Aberdeenshire Council, I think is very supportive of what we're doing. It's news to me from Dave that the R100 programme seems to have gone back yet another year, which is absolutely outrageous. But the council seems to be very supportive of our efforts and our ambitions. We've got various joint projects in discussion with them, which happy to talk about offline with any of you who are interested. As far as the customer is concerned, the end user is concerned, that the standard, what we call entry-level package, which is pretty good, it's 100 megabit per second download for £20 a month, and you can go up to 300 or a gig if you want to. We're also developing a separate social tariff, as you can see here, for imminent launch. I've been saying that for a couple of months now, but it's just choosing the right moment to launch it. Likely to be priced around £10 a month, and that's obviously for those who are challenged, economically or whatever, to afford the full £20. The expected timing, and don't hold me to this resolutely. This is just the best current guesstimate of the likely immediate timing. We are doing initial design work. I'll show you a couple of slides to show what that's looking like. DCMS, the Westminster department that's responsible for telecoms, and runs the voucher scheme, the projects have to be approved formally to be qualifying for vouchers. We hope that'll be done by April. That's, if you like, that's the starting gun for us to send out the surveyors and the engineers to do the field work and in what's called intrusive surveys. So checking the state of telegraph poles, checking the state of the underground duct network, checking for blockages and so on. And then with a fair wind, and if things all line up, we would hope to start physical building and construction in May, with first connections very soon thereafter, or just at the end. So this, you'll have seen a version of this, I think, if you'd come to previous meetings. The initial engagement, basically, we sent out a invitation to all local community councils to express an interest, and Dave was right at the top of the queue and responded very helpfully and positively, and that's where we've been particularly successful in spreading the word, or Dave's been particularly successful in spreading the word. But also we've got some very good interest in Fingen. And it is the interest does seem to be spreading. We've had a sudden burst of activity around Bankery, which is great. Can't quite explain it. Maybe Dave's got a view on that, why we've suddenly got a spate of registrations. These are the latest months, the dark blue ones. And we're also making contact in Torfins, and it looks like we're basically getting a very nice coherent pattern of demand. So growing awareness across a broader sphere, and as you see, 165 registrations of interest. We're still talking the single-digit percentages of population, but it's hugely encouraging that we've even got to that level, given relatively light level of proactive marketing on our side. So a tiny little bit of sort of quasi-technical stuff for those who are interested in this. We need to have sort of the network is multi-layered, if you like. You think of BT exchanges, you think of BT cabinets. I'm sure you've seen those being installed periodically around to support fibre to the cabinet. We will have our own cabinets scattered across the area. So one in Thailand, if we've got the positioning right there, in a Boyne. In Torfins, I think it's Kincardine and Neil, somewhere around there, and also in Bankery. These are what we've done is, although if I look at very briefly, jump back to the previous slide. These boundaries are the community council boundaries, which we got from the council, which is very helpful, and that was our sort of initial breaking Aberdeenshire down into digestible chunks, if you like. What we found, of course, is that community council boundaries don't necessarily map the way that BT has built its network, and because we're making such heavy use of the BT ducts and poles infrastructure, it makes sense for us to be designing our network pretty much in parallel with BT. So there's a slightly different series of polygons here describing different project areas, but they roughly match the community council areas more or less. If I don't want to make the sound wrong, but you don't need to worry about this sort of stuff. This is for our internal design and planning effort. It makes sense to mirror the BT layout of their networks. So these will be the basis of the projects that we're submitting to DCMS, and as I say, expect to hear back from them by April. This is the bigger picture.
Just a question on the previous slide, if I could, Michael.
Yeah.
Which is that I guess picking up some information from your later slide as well. Then you're talking about doing local loop unbundling and therefore putting your own equipment into various exchanges, and the one that would be of interest to us would be the Boyne.
Yeah.
So is the cabinet that you've got in the Cromar area, that isn't going to be associated with the Tarland telephone exchange? That's just a cabinet in order to connect people to fibre.
Correct. It'll be a small green roadside cabinet, which of a kind that you're probably quite familiar with, scattered around with an open each label. This will just have a Broadway label, but it won't be a walk-in facility like an exchange. But as I'm sure you know, Dave, BT has a mass of exchanges across the country, something like 6,000. There's a huge rationalization program of those, and they've had to share the rationalization plans with all the operators like ourselves, so that we ourselves can plan where we put our own active or optical equipment. I would imagine from what the designers come back with here, by placing our exchange unbundling activity in a Boyne, that's presumably because the Tarland exchange is probably not going to be around for forever. It presumably is one of those that is scheduled for closure. This is way above my pay grade. I don't know the detail of the network configuration for BT, but yeah, this is what our in-house designer has come up with. That there will be we will have active equipment, in other words, optical equipment, sitting in the Boyne exchange, sitting alongside BT's active equipment, so that we can share fibre, we can share exit to the internet, and so on. It gives us far more resilience and control over the quality of the network and the service that we can sort of deliver on in the form of services. But that's very helpful,
and effectively all the connections then that we might use locally, Colston and Tarland and Cromar, then we'll all go back to a Boyne, which is absolutely fine.
That's right. And then that's it. That's the Boyne exchange there, and you can see how this fits in with our larger plans for to be honest, the rest of Aberdeenshire, if time allows. But we will have a series of fibre exchanges or BT exchanges unbundled, with us having equipment sitting alongside BT Openreach, and this will provide a huge amount of resilience. So if for whatever reason this link fails, we've always got reserve capacity to link backwards or forwards. So it's all about resilience and redundancy, and there's not much point in investing in fibre networks in the local loop if you don't have resilience and redundancy in what we call the core network, which takes you to the outside world and to the internet. So the conclusion that we're confident that demand is there. I'm sure you can attest to that anecdotally. We've got the full backing of our investor, and in fact, they're very comfortable that we've brought forward the timing for the delivery of the project. It was going to be second half of the year, and we brought it forward to the first half of this year, which is great. We're more used to delays on our projects than being able to accelerate them, but this is one that we wanted to bring forward. We do have to wait for sign off for BDUK, but that's a completely routine process. Touch wood, they've never rejected a single one of our something like 300 proposals that we put into BDUK. So I don't expect problems, but you never know until it's formally approved. Support and encouragement are always welcome. This does greatly benefit from active engagement with the communities from our side, but also a meeting halfway, if you like, from your side. So anything you can be doing to point us in the right direction, basically, or point us away from obvious pitfalls. If there are connections that you can help us make in terms of knowing the right people, I've got the good fortune to have a friend down here who's from Aberdeenshire, who's got a lot of local connections with landowners and so on. So we're hopeful we'll have a good network to tap into in terms of way leaves and access rights and so on. But any soft power that you can bring to bear to support us would be immensely appreciated, obviously. But in any case, full steam ahead as far as we're concerned, and very, very exciting. So that's the end of the presentation. I hope I didn't overstay my welcome on that.
I think that's really excellent news then, for that to happen in the middle part, the early part, middle part of 2023. Then is potentially 5 years better than we could do elsewhere. Then
yes, I'm astonished, as I'm sure you are, that Openreach is putting this back, and I scratch my head as to wonder why. I wouldn't say that was going to be set in stone, because the normal response of BT whenever we pitch up in a new area is that they finally find a reason to accelerate their own build program. So competition is good because it stimulates competition, it stimulates competitor activity, and it's obviously in our interest to work as quickly as we can in this area, so that we establish a beachhead which we can then defend and expand from. So what we don't want to have is still faffing around in 6 months' time, and BT's got wind of it and basically cherry picks the market and makes life very difficult for us. So it's in our interests, as it's obviously in your interests, for us to get moving as quickly as possible, and that's why I'm particularly pleased that internally we've got the go ahead to bring it forward to the first half of the year.
It's good to see also the social tariffs then that you're potentially offering too.
Well, I'm a bit of a passionate advocate for this. That the ethos of the business is to connect the unconnected, and there's all sorts of reasons why some people just don't feel able or willing to connect to fibre, and it's unfortunate. And partly it's an affordability issue, partly they just don't see the need or the benefit, and that's completely understandable. So one of the initiatives that we're developing is to see if we can work with Aberdeenshire Council to identify social housing areas, or areas of relative, what you might call digital deprivation, and see if we can approach these in a sort of partnership way, so that not only do we get to our goal of 100% fibre availability, but the council has the means to develop some of the smart new services that you hear about: telehealth, remote fall monitoring, temperature sensing, mold sensing, and all that stuff. Which, it's the sad fact that the very often the people who are most dependent on public services, social health and educational services, are those least able to afford or to see the need for having digital connectivity in the first place. So we're trying to bridge that gap, and I'm in discussion with DCMS at the moment to see if we can get them to slightly bend the rules to allow us to get the council actively involved, not just sort of cheering on from the sidelines. It's a bit of a hobby horse of mine.
Well, Michael, you should know that this part of the world is the second most deprived area in Aberdeenshire, and it may not appear such, but it is. So anything you can do to make it
good,
more available is a good thing.
Great, good.
Has anybody got some questions for Michael?
Just one last question before I have to go again. I was wondering, Michael, if I saw that Lymphanan wasn't really on the map literally with any requests. So would it be helpful if they also get in there with
Yeah, yes, indeed. It's we're very responsive to market demand, and we just haven't had the response from that area. So if you think that's one that we should be incorporating,
yes.
You do think so? Well, I'm
yeah. Oh,
I'm very happy to do. I'll work with the engineers in the morning and get them to broaden the net to include. The reason it wasn't included initially, apart from the fact that we hadn't had any registrations, just a matter of accident, was because it does fall into the next door BT exchange area, so it was easier to leave it out than put it in. But what I can do is I could just ask the engineer to design well, basically to incorporate the next BT exchange area. We'll just expand the scope of the project.
Well, okay, we can do the we can find out for Llanfan, if there's people putting in their requests as well.
If there's a well-organized group, as this one clearly is for the Cromar community, if there's equivalent in Llanfan, then it'd be great if I could be introduced to them and we could get that conversation going.
Yeah, I would do it probably via the parent council of Llanfan School. There's no if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get the network designers on the case tomorrow, and I can send you the expanded picture if you like.
Yeah.
And get that going. Terrific.
Michael, can I ask about things going? Thank you, Anouk, very much.
Thanks very much. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Can I ask just about things going forward a little bit? You said on one of the sides that you're going to have some meetings in March and things like that. We are quite keen on branching out with our social media and things.
Brilliant.
So it would be quite good to for you to keep us. I mean, we need to be slightly careful because you're a commercial operation.
Sure.
But we are very committed to improving the broadband situation. So I would just encourage you to, when you can, to communicate with Dave. And it's a way of keeping the community informed and reminding them of what is coming down the line, we hope.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm not accusing you of having had a long silence, because you haven't, but long silences are not a good idea.
No, we've learned that very definitely in our early projects in Pembrokeshire. If we don't have anything to say, we still got to find something to say. So if there's nothing to report, what is not a good idea is to report nothing, and even if it's just maintaining that sort of steady flow of incremental information, then we absolutely need to be doing that. And I have been slightly remiss, I'll confess, in only giving Dave periodic updates. So I think
I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just trying to encourage you to.
Well, but on the social media front, we've come across this sort of slight challenge in South and Mid Wales. Is that for very understandable reasons, local Facebook groups are somewhat reluctant to introduce us to that group and don't like to have their Facebook group sullied by commercial operators, and I can fully understand that. But if there's somebody, I don't know if Dave, you're involved in local Facebook postings and things, but if we can be providing periodic updates for you to post on our behalf,
I think we can sort of apply some editorial judgment if
a number of our groups are actually open rather than closed, but fine. And of course there is lots of other opportunities then. So we've talked about the farmers markets, we've talked about the Fountain magazine, and there's 12,500 people who attend the Aboyne Games then. So I think a Broadway tent then at the Aboyne Games might be a good thing to have.
And the other thing is, I mean, you're right to talk about the landowners, because I know you go for individuals, but for example, our local estate has 66 houses on it, and if you signed up most of those, the figure of 165 would.
No, great. Absolutely. it's I don't know, what do they call them, a multi-pronged approach or something. We have to go in at the bottom, at the grassroots level, and we have to also go, you know, at the senior level, if I may put it those ways. But you know, I've got some very useful intros to some local landowners. I'm not sure if I've got them all, but if I think Dave's mentioned this before, if
we've lost you, Michael.
If you can just give me a sense as to who the local, and I can you know, I can make my own introduction, or you can introduce me if
We'll be in
if you
touch.
thought that's appropriate.
Can I ask you whether you're pleased or disappointed or whatever with the number of registrations? I mean, obviously you'd like more, but is it a reasonable amount so far?
It's a very reasonable amount so far, given, you know, we started from absolutely zero, and from you know, from a complete lack of presence and awareness. I think Dave's done a terrific job of getting the word out. Not sure how, I'm not sure what mechanisms you're using, but the word seems to have spread. We've had our own slight technical issues with the website to get that working smoothly, but I think we're pretty much there now. No, we're absolutely on track. We find that we, you know, you never really start with zero, and there's a sort of wall of suspicion that you have to overcome in the first place, and that's why it's so important to get some sort of buy-in from local, you know, senior players like yourselves. But it's not really until you get the physical evidence of activity. So until you start seeing high-vis vests and branded vehicles and things going around, that people start seeing that this is actually real, and it's not just it's not just talk. Completely take your point about farmers market, about the Aboyne games. These will all be super opportunities for us to sort of cement the presence. But you know, this is you have to play a fairly long game in this business. We hope for as many as possible in the early stages, but you know, this is going to be 2, 3, or 4 years before we get to where we expect to get to.
Can I ask you too whether I read today some scare stories about how the cost of broadband was going to rocket.
That's interesting. I hadn't seen that.
And my eyes glazed over a bit at the detail, I had to say. Because there was some better scandal to look at.
Yes.
But,
just to provide a bit of detail, Simon, very quickly then, which is that the big players then have a pricing formula that says they'll bill you by the consumer prices index plus 4.3%, and therefore there's talk then of broadband prices going up by 15%.
Are you confident that you'll be able to stick more or less to your pricing?
Yes, more or less, and don't hold me to more or less. I mean, what we've said very consistently over the last 2 years is that if we do have to raise prices, we will always be in the bottom quartile of prices across the country. So we're, you know, at £20 a month, we're right at the bottom in terms of expensiveness. So we're definitely in the bottom quartile, and we will always stay in that segment. So we'll always be the cheap, you know, in the cheapest category of providers. And we fully acknowledge that BT Openreach has a very different cost structure to us, and you know, obviously they have certain sort of social obligations which obviously impinge on them, but I mean, they are a high cost provider, and they provide a sort of a pricing ceiling for us, and we don't have any aspirations to match their prices. We are committed to providing an affordable service. There will be the option for people to go to up to 300 or 1,000 megabits per second, and that will be obviously a premium product. But again, it should be generally, you know, at the low end of what the national sort of average is, if you like. Yes, I mean, it's pretty outrageous that the larger providers have this RPI plus 4. Is it 4.5% or 4.5%? Yeah.
I think we might stop that bit of the discussion now.
Yeah.
Can I just ask Sandra and Carmela, have you got any thoughts that you'd like to air?
No, my husband's very keen, as Dave is well aware of. So no, all on board.
Great. I'm sorry, I haven't had the opportunity to introduce Campbell. Campbell, do you want to answer the next question?
Well, I'll have a go. I thought I would throw in that I was speaking to our marketing director today about the aforementioned farmers market. The Wine Games I wasn't aware of. I'll go and research that next. And our plan of action is to have a branded gazebo at these sort of events. I think Bankery's got a farmers market as well, so that would be helpful. And there's probably some more round about the Aberdeenshire area that we can make good use of that and get the word out. Bring our famous hippos too, and spare pens and things like that. So yeah.
Carmela, do you have any questions?
I have one question, and just to obviously, you know, we're really looking forward to having better broadband, because you know, I'm speaking on a phone link, haven't actually been able to see anything because of our internet. But I was listening to the time scale, because it was you know, the first actual connections would roll out back end of May. What, in terms of if you're signed up and you know, you agree, you know, in a timely manner all the way down the route, what would be the latest that you would anticipate for those people who are on board immediately, that they would get connected? Because the first people in May, that's great, but
yeah, it's good question, and it's quite a difficult one to answer, because it really depends on how large sort of the project area we're talking about. But if we're talking about the Cromar area, then it's typically a 6-month build process. I mean, that's a very large sweeping generalization, but it typically takes 6 months from beginning of survey to completion. So, you know, I think it'd be fair to say that the last people who are, you know, the people who happen to be at the end of the schedule would be thinking about sort of last quarter of this year. So, you know, November, December time before they got connected.
okay.
Tend to try and aim to walk away from winter time. So
yeah,
if
yeah,
we can
is there
get
any priority? What areas do you anticipate? You know, what kind of properties? Like, if you're working within Cromar, would you tend to start like in the villages and then work out to rural areas? Is there any sort of, you know, way that you work, you prioritize things, or not?
No, we don't. I mean, we leave. Sorry, I leave the actual scheduling to the network design and engineering delivery teams, and I mean the pattern of build is that the first thing they do is install a cabinet somewhere, because that's the starting point for all activity, and that would be presumably in Thailand, and from there they run what's called a spine route in all directions out to the periphery. So that's just a fiber cable that would run alongside roads, and that would take to the sort of the periphery of the project area, and then it would be little spurs off that, and it's very difficult to say which bits of that come first. Once you built the cabinet and you built the spines, then it's a fairly random or unpredictable exercise, at least from where we sit now, to know where individual premises would get connected. Okay, we can provide you much more as we get closer to the build time. We can give you a much better sense of the detailed scheduling. But I think you'd have to accept that, you know, some people will be at the front of the queue and some people towards the end, but still within, I hope, a reasonably tight timescale.
Yeah, it's just good.
In that conversation I mentioned earlier on today with the marketing director, his parting words were to me, "Don't make too many rash promises tonight now, Campbell." And I promised I would do that. So I think my advice would be to think about it, that we'll be in the area April, May, we'll be what we call test road and roping, getting into the culverts and up the poles and making sure all these things are right. And that we would hope to have the bulk of the work done in that 6-month period. which end starts and which end finishes sometimes has a lot to do with what you meet. So if you go and do your design and your survey work and you find that that the poles aren't as clever as you thought they were, or the culverts have been silted up or so and so forth, then it tends to knock things back a wee bit. So it's quite dangerous of us to say we'll be in that particular street at any particular time. But working in that, well,
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't take an optimistic view as our polls are in a shock state. Yeah.
Often the squeaky wheel does get the oil though, so the more that you can encourage your neighbours to get a registration of interest in, and you know, keep us on our toes, is that old adage that the squeaky wheel does get the oil, you know.
You have been talking
Right.
to the marketing manager,
Do
Campbell.
I come well briefed.
Anyway,
Yeah.
if anyone has anything more to say, thank you very much to the two of you. Keep us posted and call on us for any advice. And I noticed from the map that it looks as if you might put your Tarland cabinet in my garden. Just be warned that I'll charge a huge rent. Otherwise. Okay, thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you.